Okay, so this is James Simpkin, Public Service Tutor at Craven College, and I'm joined here this afternoon with Georgina and Sophia. And Jay, Georgina and Sophia recently visited Auschwitz as part of the Lessons from Auschwitz project. And for their project to share what they learnt with the other students in college, they chose to record a podcast, which was a really great idea. And they asked if any of the other students from public services who recently have been to Berlin and visited Sachsenhausen wanted to get involved with that, that would be great. And Jay put himself forward because, you know, they were all parts of the Holocaust. Jay has also visited Auschwitz. So that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Um, the students' experience of Auschwitz, how it made them feel, why it's important to remember the Holocaust, what lessons it has for the present and the future. And yeah, so if I can turn it over to you guys, I suppose the first question that I would ask is, even before you got there, what was your knowledge, if at all, of the Holocaust and Auschwitz?
My I knew there was death camps such as Auschwitz, but, I didn't necessarily know about Sachsenhausen, as it's not as widely taught that, that regime made forced labour camps and worked political prisoners to death instead of just, a systematic death camp, as you will. That's something that I didn't know.
Yeah. And Georgina, Sophia, had you actually heard of Auschwitz and Holocaust before you went?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like it's something that we learned about in school. I'd say Auschwitz was definitely like the main camp because I'd say it's probably the most known concentration camp and death camp in the world. But I'd say like based on knowledge just strictly on like GCSE history and stuff, you more taught about what the Holocaust was as a whole and what Hitler did and stuff, rather than what actually happened in the camps. Like obviously you learn about not the concentration camps, like the gas chambers and stuff, but it's not other than that, it's not really much. I did learn about it in school as well, but, my great-grandma's parents were killed by Nazi, um, soldiers, and so that's how I know more about it.
Mhm.
I didn't learn much about it in school though, um, but I did hear about it, and, I think I just wanted to learn a bit more. I wanted to be there in real life and just see, feel, you know, some kind of like, how is it? What is it?
You're from a Ukrainian background, is that right,
Yep,
Sophia? Yeah. Yeah. So closer to that region geographically.
yep.
Yeah. Good. So what made you want to apply to go on the Lessons from Auschwitz trip? Jay, you know, you've been there, Sachsenhausen. What made you want to go on those? This is in particular.
After finishing Auschwitz and learning from GCSE history, I wanted to get more of a deeper knowledge of what happened because it's not just, as we say, it's not just the gas chambers and killing. There's a lot more of a deeper history, and I wanted to learn those nitty gritty parts and see what life was like for prisoners individually and more of a honed in aspect instead of just what happened to them as a whole.
Definitely, I'd definitely say like similar to Jay, like that kind of like curiosity, but not in the sense of, oh yeah, let's make it all happy. I think it's definitely once you start on something like that and you start kind of scratching the surface of it, you want to kind of go deeper and deeper into kind of your own personal investigation. And obviously, it's one of them things where there is the facts and there is the evidence behind it all, but it's kind of, especially at Auschwitz, it's one of those places where it is very much personal interpretation on how you feel and very much vibe with that place because you do notice a lot of things while you're there that you might not necessarily have thought that you'd notice.
Good, and we'll get into that more later on. So did you guys have any expectations at all when you were going to Auschwitz, Sachsenhausen? Was there anything you were expecting to see that maybe was different than what you expected?
I expected I didn't know how big Auschwitz II actually was. It's told, it's a large camp, mass killing millions and millions and millions of Jews, Gypsies, etc. But I didn't know how big it actually was.
Mm,
It takes you a long time to walk around the whole thing. It's a huge place. It's like a town. That surprised me.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jay on that. Like, obviously, Auschwitz one is kind of its own thing. That's what you think of Auschwitz. That gate and just the entrance and everything. That is what you think of Auschwitz. But then when you go to the Birkenau camp, it's completely different. Definitely, that's where it feels like a prison the most because it's one big structure and then fields and fields and fields of land, and then they destroyed like kind of like dorms and stuff where they slept,
Yeah.
and like looking at the toilets and hearing about how much time and like how many people had to go use the bathroom. It's crazy. Like, I'd definitely say that's probably the most thing that I kind of took with me.
For me, it was the fact that all the buildings were still there. I was expecting to see like ruins and, you know, few gas chambers were, ruined and it was just bricks, but I just expected it not to be, still standing there. I didn't expect so much evidence to be there and still the beds and the toilets, the everything. It's just, I did not expect that.
You'd expect when finding that they'd wipe everything off the face of the earth kind of thing. This is
Yeah.
that horrendous that you just wouldn't want to remember it. But it's good that we're remembering it though. It doesn't happen again.
Yeah, good. So, I mean, from a public service point of view, one of the reasons why the main reason why we've done this trip several times over the years is because I know you're doing a different course, Sophia, but for public services, it is to remind our future police officers, soldiers, etc., that it was the arms of the state that went around rounding people up in Nazi Germany. It was the police, it was the army that captured people and put those in those camps and as to remind where racism prejudice can end up. Do you think that if someone was interested in being in the public services like the police, the army, whatever, that's an important place to take students to learn about, this is where racism can end up, this is where the abuse of power can end up?
Yeah, it's 100% a good thing to learn about for those people going into that career, especially because there is the question of if the soldiers genuinely believed in what they were doing or they were just following orders. If something was like this in the future, and n- knowing from that knowledge now, if you was told to do something as heinous as that, you can now know to fight against those orders and say, no, I'm not following that order, that's wrong. And then hopefully everyone else will follow along and not do it, and therefore that won't happen again. But back then, with how big that regime was and how like the soldiers would have known what could possibly happen to them if obviously they went against that regime, they would have personally, as they did, go through with it. They wouldn't go against it because they either believed in it or they were scared of what would happen to them if they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think because obviously the Holocaust is kind of like referred to as like a genocide and a regime, it's definitely like one of them things because around the world even now, like people think, oh, the police are just racist and discriminate against everybody. That is one of the biggest stereotypes, whether it's in the UK, America, or all over Europe, stuff like that. It is a big problem, and it was a big problem then, as you can see, because you had police officers, whether they were local authorities or what, just gathering people, whether it wasn't even necessarily Jewish people, it was like Jay mentioned earlier, gypsies, people of a certain type.
And anyone that didn't like.
Exactly. Anyone that didn't fit Hitler's definition of, or blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever, like of the perfect genetics, like that was how it was. And it's not kind of how it needs to be going forward. It's definitely a big life lesson for public services and uniform services to learn for.
And something that I learned whilst at Sachsenhausen, the secret police, you've got, like, if a secret police kind of thing was made in the UK today, if you was asked to join that, you shouldn't because they were all about listening on people in the houses. People stood up, they stand at bus stops listening to people's conversations on the bus, that kind of thing. If you said one thing out of line, even if it would just make a silly little joke, like Adolf Hitler's a little bit stupid. If you said that, you'd go to a death camp. Like, if we were even told to go in the secret police like that, you shouldn't. And that's a big lesson too.
Sophia, I know you're doing a different course, but does that resonate with you? The importance of people who might want to be soldiers, police officers, or whatever public service, not going along with illegal orders and things like that and persecuting people.
I think, yeah, for sure. I think people should learn more about it. If we look about other countries and what's going on right now, all the wars, it needs to be stopped. I think, like, take the Russia, for example, and Ukraine thing. I mean, if you say something bad about Putin, you're gonna go to jail. You're gonna get killed. My course is more like midwives, nurses, and people should learn that being racist is not. It's not a choice. You can't be racist. It's just you can't. You don't need to be racist. Just be kind. You have to support people, help people, and not discriminate them just because they have blue eyes and you just don't like them for some reason.
We're all humans on a planet together, and that's all.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, what was something that stood out for you most about your trips?
Something that stood out to me the most, the fact that about both Auschwitz and Sachsenhausen, how businesslike it was for the Nazis. When prisoners were taken from wherever they were to Auschwitz, or even the first 30 prisoners of Auschwitz were moved from Sachsenhausen. That's a little fact for you. When they got there to Auschwitz or wherever it was, they'd take all their belongings. They'd take the gold teeth from bodies if they died. They'd take the clothes, anything of value. They'd take, so then they can fund their army, wherever that money went. They'd steal from them, and the amount of money that they could have got, and especially Jewish people. The Jewish people back then, they'd be like jewelers, bankers. They'd have a lot of money, and they were told they're going to start a new life. They'd go to these camps with everything they've got, and then the Nazis can take as much as they want from them.
Mhm.
And it surprised me. It's very sad that
So, yeah, anything that particularly stood out?
Yeah, I'd definitely say when we went to Auschwitz here, this isn't a fact that I knew. I didn't know that Auschwitz had hospital.
Mhm.
So that was really interesting for me to learn, but it was really sick because the doctors were instructed to kill the sick with bi-lethal injection or send them to the gas chamber. The doctors were never there to help them. Like, they just weren't.
Mhm.
It was either you're injected and die or you're sent to the gas chambers.
Mm.
It was die or die. It was not live or die.
Mhm.
Th
Yeah.
there wasn't that option.
Something that stood out for me was that um, Jewish people were treated like animals, like pigs, like dogs, and it's like they weren't allowed to wash themselves. They were literally washing in like a puddle,
Mhm.
you know, and they only were allowed to go to the toilet for 10 minutes a day.
Mhm.
And it was so many houses, more than 1,000 people. And they were still washing that puddle to not lose their dignity and to still feel like they're human. And they were human, and they wouldn't give up and they still stood their ground as much as they could.
I have one more thing that surprised me. It was the children that were brought to Auschwitz too. I can't remember the guy's name, but he experimented on those children. Yeah, and the experiments that were horrendous, and even more so, those children ended up getting Stockholm syndrome, looking at that guy as if he were the father. They loved him like a father, which is insane to me. That you can torture somebody, children, that much that they look at you like you're a father figure and you love them. That is horrendous to me.
And on that note, about that emotional response, I mean, having been myself to Auschwitz several times, it's always a funny one because it doesn't get it gets less shocking, but it always seems so. It feels to me like an evil place to walk round it. I mean, you go there in the spring and the bird, it's a nice sunny day. But for me, one of the things that I found difficult to process is particularly when you're getting ready to leave and you're thinking about what am I going to do the next day, and then you feel guilty because you get to leave, and we've got all these ordinary mundane thoughts, but you can't imagine what it was like for the people there who were just, you know, could die any other day. And again, with taking students in the past, and this is no one's fault, I sometimes feel like it takes students, sort of some students, time to process or to understand what they've experienced, because for some it can seem a bit distant as though it was in the past, etc. What was your guys' like emotional coming away from there? Have you had time to process that emotionally, or do you still feel a bit numb, or like it will take years, months for it to actually settle in what you witnessed, or did it seem pretty immediate that you connected with what happened?
When I was there, it was almost like it was walking into a funeral kind of thing. It's that feeling, it
Yeah,
dawns on you, someone's died, but yeah, it's millions of people. Coming away from there, it was so it weighs on you. The fact that those million of people weren't able to come out, and they would, and the feelings that we had there, they would have had it 10 times worse. They actually had to go through things, but I still haven't like processed it as such. Like, I know what happened. I can do, like, in my head, I can say what happened, etc. But there's still an emotional response, and there always will be an emotional response in regards to these camps. It'll always be something that upsets me. Not physically, I wouldn't cry about it, but I just feel down when visiting or looking about it, etc.
I think it's one of those places, like when you walk into Auschwitz one, you walk through those gates. Obviously, you've got your headphones on, but you're still very surrounded and you feel it's almost like you're feeling watched, like, through the windows because they're so barred up.
yeah,
It literally looks like prison windows. It feels like every single prisoner is just got your eyes on you and you've got a million people staring at you because they they've never left, really, if you think about it. Because it's not like, yeah, they've been buried, some of them, if they got the chance, but they've never actually left. And it's a very creepy and eerie thought that you've got how many millions of people just that used to be there, that used to just work and used to just get on with their lives as best they could in that circumstance. And then when you're there, kind of not celebrating the idea, but you go in there to learn about it, as if it's kind of just a little lesson. Like, when you think about it, that was people's lives. Like, it's not, a little fairy tale. It's not
yeah.
something that was light to learn about. It's like you just take that responsibility really heavy because it's like, well, yeah, I'm here, had a choice to come here. These people didn't. And then when you think about it like that, it's like, well, why did I choose to go? But then ultimately, you know why?
Mm.
Because you want to kind of respect that little bit of honour that those people still have that. How many people, like billions of people in this world now, are taking the time, like, especially like politicians and like leader governments and stuff, like they're taking the time to put that in children's education for it to stay alive and for it to be looked at as something that shouldn't happen again, which I think is a really important thing to learn about.
I think we came there to learn and, to not repeat the past and to understand what actually happened there. And, like you all said that we could just go. But they tried to get out, they were killed. They couldn't get out. And then it's also for me, it's like it was really quiet. Like Jay said, like at a funeral. Even though people were talking, it was just this feeling, it was just so quiet. And I think people, obviously, most of them take it seriously. But then I remember I turned around and I see some girls just posing pictures at the train racks. And I was just like, people died here. You can't laugh about, pose for pictures. It's just disrespectful, I think. And obviously, it's just really sad to me.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, and that reminds me of something when you do the training before you go, they ask that, or they did used to, I don't know whether they still do. But is it all right to take pictures? The situation you described, Sophia, sounded inappropriate, so they were taking selfies. But what do you guys think about that? Should we take pictures of places like that, um, in order to share the images of what happened, or is it uncomfortable? What are your thoughts about that?
Taking pictures if the idea behind those pictures is this personal gain, their own arrogance, their own social media presence, it's like, "Hi, look at me, look where I am." That's not good. What you should be taking photos of is, like, if it's a selfie, fine, as long as it's not, like, for what I said. But, like, it should be photos that mainly reflect where Auschwitz or Sachsenhausen, wherever, is the main image, is the main message. Not, "Hi, look at me." It should be, "Look at this. This isn't good."
For remembrance purposes,
Yeah,
mostly.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jay on that because I get it if you wanted to post it on social media, but you need to have a reason behind that, like making it kind of look research into this if you don't know about it,
Mm.
maybe use this as a little bit of information,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I feel like taking photos is good, especially for people in this generation, because we are known to not have the best memories. And I think to be able to have that in your phone, I know it's not the most perfect beach holiday anyone could dream about, but having that kind of history in your phone is a very great thing because you don't know how long it's going to be there for. Places are already being destroyed there, and you see all the decomposition of all the buildings and stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's only been 80 years, but you don't know how many more years you're going to get out of that. I definitely agree on Sophia's point from earlier about the silence because I mentioned to Sophia while we were there, it's like there's no birds, there's no sound, and it's like all signs of life there is no longer.
Yeah, so, and you were alluding to that as well, Sophia, that there were people taking in what you thought were inappropriate kind of photos, etc.
Yeah, I do think that it should be only for educational purposes because that's why we go there. It's not Paris, it's not Eiffel Tower, it's for education. Like, I saw a different video that's just, pictures from Auschwitz, from the buildings, from the gas chambers, and it was describing what it was. And, people could read it and learn more and educate themselves. But it's definitely not for the posing in front of train tracks where lots of people would die in. That's what I think.
All good points. So, I mean, what are your hopes for the future then? What would be your hopes for society, for people, for future public service workers, whether that's in the caring industries or in the uniformed industries? What do you hope that the world learns from remembering places like Auschwitz, Sachsenhausen, etc., as we go into the future?
I hope that everyone learns that everyone deserves a life, even and especially for police officers and the military. Don't persecute someone just because of gender, hair color, skin color, eye color, those things. If you're going to lock someone up, if you're going, it has to, for a criminal reason. If they've genuinely done something wrong, punish them. Fair enough. But that doesn't mean kill them. That doesn't mean mass kill their family. It means punish that individual for his crimes, and that's it. People should learn that there doesn't need to be an overwhelming, controlling government to decide what you do, where you go, what you're allowed to say. You should be able to live freely as a human being among human beings peacefully and not have to worry about a government, about a military, about a police officer. If you're doing crime, then worry about a police officer. But an ordinary person shouldn't have to worry about any of that. They should just be able to live.
So your point is don't put all your trust and your power into one person. As much as we can have a prime minister and other countries can have a president and stuff, there's reasons why we have government parties, there's reasons why we have political debates, there's reasons why we have voting, is because not one person can have that power in it. this is what this has shown. One person got the power, one person believed in one thing that they didn't like, and it led to 4.2 million people dying. And that can't happen again.
And that person really, really wanted power all the way from the First World War. He was even going back to the Night of the Long Knives. He had his first army, the SA. The guy, leader of the SA, was looking like a leadership challenge, and he was also homosexual. So Hitler decided he was going to kill that person and everyone else in the SA to make sure that he keeps the power.
I hope that history doesn't repeat itself because as much as we can see right now, it's going downhill. And I just hope that all the doctors, nurses, police officers, army, soldiers, everyone, they just learn more. They think with what they think, not just follow orders like, I don't like that blue collar, kill them. Or I don't like what they're wearing. I don't like their skin color. I don't like this, kill them. I just hope that they don't just follow orders because they're scared to lose their job. You can always change your life. You can always find a new job. You can always start over. But you can't start over if you get killed.
Yeah, the military, anyone in services needs to remember that they are a human being. They're not in government. They're not controlling. Their rightful purpose is to serve and protect the people of their country or anyone in their alliance, etc. Like the American army should help the British people if they needed, that kind of thing. We need to learn that if we have an overwhelming government like the Nazi regime, fight against it before they take too much power. The army need to fight against it, not follow orders from the government. The police need to not follow orders from that government if they are wrong. We need to all remember that we are people. When the people in service and not the government. That's what we need to remember.
And in a period where there's rising anti-Semitism, prejudice of all kinds, against gypsies, Roma people, travellers, gay people, etc. What lessons for those listening would you pass on from what you've experienced about tackling those kind of prejudices, having visited Auschwitz?
Let people live how they would like. If some people don't like certain things, we like and dislike, and that's a basic human thing. We like and dislike, love, hate, etc. But if people don't want to be a certain way that you dislike, you should be able to let them live. It doesn't how they want. Your opinion should not matter to that person, and that person should not matter that much to you that you need to tell them stop doing this. I don't like you. You need to change. Let them live and be themselves. People should be allowed to be themselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, given Sophia's background from coming from Ukraine.
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously I've grown up in a mixed race household. So it's like Sophia's kind of experienced that more firsthand with wars and stuff. And then there's the racial aspects because it's like you see like Black Lives Matter movement, that didn't turn into a genocide. That turned into a movement. You seen the Ukraine and Russia war. Yeah, that's still continuing, but it hasn't spread to the world and then caused more destruction, which I think that those are the kind of things that we need to be recognising. It's all right to be feeling a certain type of way. Everyone's entitled to an opinion on everything. It's just the way people are. But making them into situations where it escalates to even killing one person, that's where you know it's wrong. And I think that's what more people need to talk about.
I think people should mind their own business. Obviously, as Georgina said, you can have an opinion. You can think whatever you want about me or about anyone, you know, but you should not act on it. If you don't like someone, if I don't like someone, I don't go around stabbing people. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I just let it go. I think people should really focus on their lives and how to make my life better rather than focusing on someone else's, or they've got blonde hair, I don't like that, or etc. So that's what I think.
Exactly. What's going to be so important about a person that you don't like, that you jeopardize your relationship with your family, your future family? You're not able to have kids because you're in prison. You're not able to say hello to you can't even say good morning to your mum anymore because you're in prison. What's so important that you stop that person from being a certain way, that you jeopardize all of that? That's always my question.
Exactly. I think all we can do now is just learn from the past. And I think it's very good in the world that we haven't seen an event in modern times that has come to this like catastrophic level. But I think it's definitely something that we need to look at, learn from, and not repeat at all.
Yes, so Georgina, Sophia, Jay, I think you've made some excellent points there. You know, really, really good reflections on what you've experienced visiting Auschwitz and Sachsenhausen, etc. Letting your colleagues, if you like, your classmates, your college mates know about what you've experienced and how we should be fighting against prejudice, racism, remembering why this can all lead to, you know, these terrible outcomes. So thank you very much, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy listening to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.